movies from various genres and decades. Stay tuned for this episode. All right, we are on episode 17, and this time we're doing random weird films. Any genre, any era, doesn't matter. If it's weird, we're going to talk about it. And we have a guest here, Scary Gary, as Santa. He's gonna go first.
Okay. So yeah, for my first movie, I gotta take a look what year it was. Okay, I'm going to 2005. Movie called Ginger Dead Man. Now, for one thing, this has got Gary Busey as the star, which tells you right there we're going to have a weird movie. But the basic premise is Gary Busey plays this killer, and he goes to prison, and he's going to be executed. But he manages to pull off this thing. The one survivor runs a bakery, and he manages to get his essence put into a gingerbread dough that she bakes. And so the gingerbread man, she makes this big gingerbread man, probably, this tall, and it comes to life and starts killing. And it's got Gary Busey's voice. And it's a horror comedy. And he's got a lot of, almost Freddy Krueger like one-liners. And, it is a very, very goofy movie. It's very campy. And it is just, it's fun. It's a dumb movie, but it's fun.
All right. It sounds like it's one of those movies that you check your brain at the door.
Yeah, kind of.
I've done plenty of things on this show already.
That actually kind of reminds me that they may have taken a page out of like Child's Play.
Yes, it's very much the Child's Play kind of thing.
Yeah, but it sounds like it's fun. And is that through Full Moon?
It is Full Moon, yeah.
Full Moon,
yeah. So you know how over the top it's going to be anyway. And Full Moon, one of the superpowers Full Moon has is for doing things with little miniature creatures.
Yeah.
You seem to do that better than just about anybody.
Sounds good. You're up, Mr. Bill.
So that is my first one.
Okay, so I guess I'm up. My first one, I'm going all the way back to 1932, and Todd Browning's Freaks is a very creepy movie. First of all, the freaks are disabled people who are in a circus performing. So do keep in mind the time frame that this thing is made. Not exactly very pleasant term for those, but there's a lot of dwarfs, and they use a lot of the old terms for some of them too, like microcephaly. They have people at the time, they would call them pinheads because they had the underdeveloped heads or the underdeveloped brain. But it's an interesting film because they are kind of the good guys here. The bad guys are this woman and the strong man kind of manipulate some of them to work against each other. Like she comes on to the one dwarf who's actually married to another female dwarf, and they accept her as one of them. And they have this big song, my favorite part, at the dinner table. One of us, Google Gobble, one of us, we accept you, one of us. So they try to accept her, but then she just flips out and tells them how awful they are because they're disabled and all this stuff. So she's just an awful human being. And the strong man in the circus is also on her side, and he kind of makes fun of them as well. So she comes on to the one dwarf to kind of basically just make fun of him. And they do get their revenge in the end. I won't give up the ending because that's the weirdest part of the movie, what they do to her at the end. But it's very interesting to see what the lifestyle was back then and to see how some of them tried to get by as well as they could on their with their disabilities. And there are
Right.
also other people without disabilities working at the circus who understand them a lot better. So, it's not just, people without disabilities versus those with. There's people, on both sides. Um, but a lot of people count it as one of the creepiest movies of all time, especially for its time frame. And if you don't know Todd Browning, of course, he directed Dracula and he directed most of Lon Chaney Sr.'s silent films. So he is very well established in the horror genre by this time. But Todd Browning's Freaks is definitely worth checking out, if nothing else, just to see how far we've come with people with disabilities.
Yeah, the what is it? The political correctness on how everything's described. Yeah. Like I saw it many years ago, but I'd probably refresh myself. But it's not really, I mean, it's not gory or gross. It just has that disturbing vibe to it. So it's like,
That's what they were so good at in the 30s and 40s, the atmosphere. And it's something that, I guess, to me, is sorely lacking in most, but not all, more modern horror films. It's just that atmosphere that they could establish. And in my opinion, it's difficult to establish it without black and white.
yeah,
Just
there's some films that look good in black and white, and they get a good. I don't think the original, the 1932 Dracula, would have looked good in color.
And as long as I'm on the black and white thing, technically they weren't even black and white films in the 30s. Up until the 50s, they used to use nitrate film. That's why they called it the silver screen. And if you can see some of that footage from when they used to use this nitrate film, it just shines off of the screen. It's got this beautiful, vibrant look that I wish they could reestablish today, but I guess technology hasn't figured it out or just doesn't care enough about old films to do it. But it really had this shine back in the day. And I told my wife about that one day because she has some chemistry background. She's like, they couldn't make film out of nitrate. I said, why? She said, it's too unstable. It would catch fire. And I said, yeah, that happened a lot. And that's why they stopped using it.
All right.
That's why color films started in 1939, but they didn't make all color films until the late 50s and early 60s because they just thought that shine of the nitrate film looked so good.
And also, too, the other argument is there was not many color studios. There was more black and white studios than color.
There were, and it was cheaper at the time to keep going black and white. But if you look at the 50s, even those film noirs, most of those stopped using the nitrate film. It's just a more drab look to the black and white. Then it's really black and white instead of that silver shine off of the screen that they used to have.
Right.
In the 50s, they finally stopped using nitrate. It was just they were tired of their studios catching fire.
I don't blame.
I mean, there is that. But
all right. Well, my first film is from 1962, and it's Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Betty Davis and Joan Crawford, the stars. Betty Davis plays an aging child star that gets tormented by Joan Crawford, and they didn't until later on describe it as a psychological horror. That back then they were doing it as a drama, but it's more psychological horror. I mean, it just Joan Crawford just just gets right up onto her, just short of massive physical abuse. It's just more of mental abuse. And it's like the second time I've ever seen it, and it's like, I think it's scarier than a lot of horror movies nowadays because of the subject matter. And just like yours, Bill, I don't think that kind of movie could have been made today.
No, I don't think so.
the psychological horror of whatever happened to Baby Jane. You know, I believe that she's in disabled, and you know, and yours the same thing. So a lot of that the ADA would not have approved these movies.
It's Betty Davis's Baby Jane. Joan Crawford was his older sister, who's wheelchair disabled. Yeah.
Betty Davis was like the aging child star. I mean, if they do it right, it could be that kind of a movie could be made today. But the ADA, which is the American Disabilities Act, will not approve of something like that. You know, you'd have to really convince them that this is a movie that needs to be made. That it has the story is more important than the characters. But again, this is one that, I mean, great in black and white. It wouldn't have had the same effect if it was in color. And it was 1962, so they were starting to do color films about in that time more and more. And it also has a major debut of an actor named Victor Bono.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that was his very first movie.
King Tut.
King Tut.
Batman in 1966.
Yep.
Yeah. So that is my second movie.
That is an awesome film. Betty Davis gives one of the greatest performances of her career, and that's saying something. And it started and it established a new subgenre of horror, the hagsploitation, which is another term that is not exactly politically correct, but it's the one they chose for it. But yeah, it was the first hagsploitation film, and both Betty Davis and Joan Crawford revitalized their careers doing a bunch of hagsploitation films after that one.
Oh yeah.
Did they already despise each other by that point?
I think so.
I think that was the film that started their despising of each other.
Yeah, that probably was an uncomfortable movie set.
It is, yeah.
And I think also too, if I'm not mistaken, the billing. They were probably fighting on who's going to be getting top billing.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure.
And their egos going that far. I mean, to me, it's like if my name is on the credits, that's all I care. It doesn't have to be first. It could be last. You know, as long as it's there. That
alphabetical.
Yeah, that's the best way. So.
Of course, Betty Davis wouldn't like that because Joan Crawford would go before her.
Yeah.
I often like Betty Davis far more than Joan Crawford. It just is the old timey movie guy. Joan Crawford always tried to play the goody two shoes, and Betty Davis was just always the badass.
Yeah.
Like even in that movie, you wouldn't talk to me that way if I wasn't in this chair, but you are in that chair, Blanche. You are. I mean, she's such a bitch. And nobody plays a bitch better than Betty Davis, and she would probably say that herself.
Oh, yeah, she would admit that. Yeah.
Yeah, so many of her movies, she plays the bitch. And she played it so well. But my understanding is she was just a sweetheart out behind the stage. And Joan Crawford was more the bitch on, behind the stage. But on screen, she had to play the goody two-shoes.
I mean, come on, Joan Crawford even gets turned into a monster movie kind of thing in a Blue Oyster Cult song. So
yeah.
Yeah, there is I like that song too.
Yeah, it's a good song.
It is. Blue Oyster Cult's a great band.
Yeah.
All right, back to you, Father Time.
Okay, so I'm going to go to 2013 with this one. And it's an animated movie. And it fits with the hat. Infinite Santa 8000. This is an absolutely bizarre movie. The animation, it's the way I would describe the animation, the artwork at times is beautiful, and other times it's really, really rudimentary. I would say it's almost like if you were to pair, mix heavy metal with wizards and Beavis and Butthead as far as the animation. I mean, it's kind of bizarre, but and the premise is incredibly bizarre too. It's the year 8000, and there aren't any pure humans left. Everybody's like a cybernetic kind of person, and there's a Santa, but he's not like Santa like you think of. Food is very scarce, and the very first scene you see him fighting another cybernetic being in a ring for food. That's how you get your food. He goes and fights and kills this other cybernetic being. Well, there's also this mad scientist who reminds me very much of the High Evolutionary in Marvel Comics, because he's tinkering with DNA of creatures and trying to build himself an army. And he has a beef with this Santa. And so he's sending out his people to try to kill Santa, including this massive, basically kaiju Easter bunny that comes to kill Santa. And
this sounds like
it is not a great film, but it is fun to watch. It's got some good music, and it actually has some Christmas spirit built into it. And the ending's kind of charming, actually. After all the weirdness, I mean, it gets pretty gory too.
It took a turn towards Night of the Lepus. If you've seen that,
yes.
Yeah, I remember that one.
That might be the worst movie ever made.
I've seen worse.
Yeah, well, it's got to be up there anyway. I think at least.
So yeah, Infinite Santa 8000. That's my second pick.
I gotta look that up. I gotta see if that's on any streaming thing.
Yeah, you might enjoy that one, Ron. I think you might.
Animation.
It's worth a view. You know what? It is worth watching.
Animation certainly intrigues me. I've been glued to Me Tunes since we got it. All right, so I'm going a little off script from what we generally do here, just because when Ron said let's do crazy movies like that, two movies popped into my head, and first one that popped into my head I'll do last because it's chronologically it's the last one. Second one that actually popped into my head was this W.C. Fields film called Never Give a Sucker an Even Break. You would not expect this kind of thing from W.C. Fields, 1941. You would not expect this kind of thing from W.C. Fields. It's almost two movies. The first half of the movie is your typical W.C. Fields film. He's going to the movie studio. He's got this script that he's written. He wants to sell it to a producer. That's your plot. He stops at a restaurant and eats and makes fun of an overweight waitress. That's very typical W.C. Fields. She at one point, she comes to him and says, there's something very big about you, your nose. And then she turns around and he looks and he says, yeah, there's something very big about you too. I just die about it. Anyway, so it's very typical W.C. Fields, about the first half hour, 45 minutes. Then he gets to the studio. He talks with the producer. He's trying to sell this script, and he starts reading the script. The rest of the movie is the script that he wrote. One point in the script that he writes, still more typical W.C. Fields slapstick, puns, things like that. He hates kids. He hates women. He drinks a lot. That's his shtick, right? How much of it was real, how much it wasn't, but he really knows even behind the scenes. But he wasn't really that bad a guy overall. But anyway, there's this one scene, he's in an airplane, and somehow the door of the airplane opens up, and his bottle of whiskey flies out the door of the airplane, and W.C. Fields jumps out of the plane to grab his bottle of whiskey as if they're both falling down, crashing towards the ground. And this is where it just flies off the rails. Lands in a giant mesa where there's a king played by Leon Errol, who's another comic at the time, and he gets all twisted up in this fantasy world on this established kingdom on this giant mesa that he lands on. There's fairies and queens and all these kinds of things, and it's just wild after that. I don't even know how to describe it. It's just nothing like what you expect from W.C. Fields, especially when the first half of the movie is nothing different. It's typical.
Right.
Leon Errol, by the way, always plays a henpecked husband. That's his shtick. And of course, he is the king, but he has a domineering queen who, overrides him at all costs.
Right.
Leon Errol, one of the underrated comics of the 30s and 40s. If you get a chance, check out a short subject called The Doll. But anyway, so that's kind of how it fits in, at least as a fantasy movie. It's mostly a fantasy movie.
Right.
And of course, I don't think I'm giving up much that script kind of sucked and they didn't buy the movie. But
it's almost sounds like he had a fever dream. And that was what it was. A fever dream.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, it just really goes way off the rails. I mean,
aside from clips, I have never seen a W.C. Fields movie.
They're not bad. They're about what you they're about what you would expect.
I don't think I've seen a whole W.C. Fields movie either. I've seen parts of them, but
yeah, I just seen like little clips, of it, and then hearing how he, like you were saying, they're very abusive abusive attitude towards women and children.
More so children, really, but
yeah.
But it is done with a grain of salt, and they are what they are at the time. But you know what? Everybody always gets the better of them.
Right.
He acts kind of abusive towards them, but he never wins. He's always low man on the totem pole. He also hated Philadelphia, was one of his other big shticks. I think his gravesite says something like, "All in all, this is better than being in Philadelphia." It's on his tombstone. I've heard.
Right. Oh, that sounds like an interesting movie.
I mean, it's a typical 40s movie for the first half, and then 40s comedy. His shtick is what it is. It has its humor. He does his shtick, but they always get the better of him.
All right. Well, my second film it's from 1973. It's called Torso. It's an Italian, was it Gallo or Gallo? Movie.
Gallo, I believe.
And I'm not going to pronounce what the Italian title of it, but it's translated to "The Bodies Bear Traces of Carnal Violence." And the movie was also known as Carnal Violence. It was, I guess, I want to say that these were also kind of proto-slasher films, but done with the murder mystery vibe to it. So it wasn't like a full-on, every minute there's the killer was out there, slicing and dicing. We had some mystery to it, and I guess like most of those films, they tend to keep you guessing as to who the killer is. It's usually towards the very end, which I always find pretty cool, because I don't want to know who it is unless it's being told ahead of time that the whole point of the thing is the movie is the chase to get to that person and to see how they outsmart. But I think if you don't get to see who the killer is, I think it adds that mysteriousness to it. This one is a pretty brutal film from 1973, and the Italians were really good at doing brutal films. And I think it's almost on par with some of the brutal current films. I mean, if someone loves the ones of today, horror movies of today, the killer's relentless type of feel. They should go back to the Italian early 70s, late 60s, early 70s era when it was really huge. These type of films, Torso, Deep Red, even Suspiria, even though that was more supernatural. But it's still, this one is really good. If you like any of the other Italian horror movies, this is one you need to get, because it just fits perfectly.
They were so much more brutal. The Italian movies at the time, they were a lot more brutal and a lot gorier than a lot of the other stuff coming out.
Yeah, I think they wanted to top what the Americans, the American horror films of the 70s had some gore in it, but not a lot, but just enough for the emphasis. And some of them were psychological, and some of the British were kind of getting a little brutal and stuff. But then the Italians just said, "What's that old thing? Hold my beer."
Yeah.
It's like you ain't seen that. Yeah. But yeah, this is one of a film that I had recently got within the past 15 years, so it's relatively new to me, but it's kind of becoming a favorite of mine when I want to see something a little on the weird side. And that's my number 2.
Okay. Well, then we're back to me. I am going to do a movie for my third one that has actually been mentioned in a couple of these, but I've never actually included it as one of my picks before. It's from 2022, Amityville in Space. And this is a Polonia Brothers movie, and the Polonia Brothers movies are super, super low budget films. And rather than trying to cover up that low budget, a lot of times they just sort of lean into it and just go for it. And this is one that definitely they lean into it. But given that it's a space movie, it's really kind of, I don't know, they pull it off just because you know what to expect from Polonia Brothers. If it were coming from somebody else, you might be like, oh my God, these effects are terrible and whatever. But it's sort of part of the charm of those movies, I think. The premise is what makes it a crazy movie. The premise to the film is this priest decides he's going to take care of the Amityville house once and for all. So he goes in to try to do an exorcism in the house. Well, he does manage to rid the world of the Amityville house. He sends it, with him in it, out into space and into the future. And it gets spotted as an anomaly by this ship in the future. Basically, it's almost a Star Trek meets Alien kind of thing. But once they get into the house, it takes on almost an Event Horizon kind of vibe, because you've got this demonically possessed house, and it's taking care of these people who are gotten on board it, and it's also trying to spread its evil by possessing people and things like that. So it's a really, really kind of bizarre premise, but to me it works. And like I said, largely it works because I know what Polonia Brothers is, and I know what to expect for their movies. But yeah, it's a bizarre movie, but it's fun.
I saw the little trailer on that, and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, I watched the trailer and I thought, my God, this has to be the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And then I got a hold of the movie and watched it. And I'm like, it's actually, the premise actually kind of works in a really bizarre sort of way. And I found it fun.
Is it part of the Amityville canon or not? If that
You
makes
know, I don't know that there is a canon. I mean, there are so
I
many
think
Amityville movies, and I mean, it's
fair
not
enough.
part of the official run of Amityville movies,
Okay.
I
but
think in name only.
yeah, I mean, it does. I will say this: that one actually takes place in the actual house, or it's supposed to. I mean, the sets don't look anything like the real house or the sets from the other movies, but it is supposed to be the actual house on Ocean Avenue, and you know, so it does have that. Some of these movies don't even have that. You know,
Okay.
they're the woods around there. There's Amityville Karen. Literally, the only connection to Amityville there is that there's a bottle of wine that was bottled there and has like the demonic stuff in it, and it goes out to California, and this woman drinks it and
Wow.
gets possessed. So I mean, you know, it's a lot closer tie than some of them because it actually has supposedly the actual house.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, that was, there's also one. I think it's part of the Amityville thing where a mirror that was in the house, someone it goes up for auction somewhere, and someone gets it, and I guess the spirits are trapped in the mirror, and they use that premise. But
Oh, kind of an
uh,
Oculus thing.
yeah, that's probably where they got the idea to.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's like I say,
All right.
that's cool.
Yeah, you know, we've mentioned it several times before. I figured, all right, this is a good opportunity to include that movie.
Might as well cover it officially, right?
Yes, exactly.
All right. So my next one, we haven't done much Hitchcock here, which I mean, Hitchcock, most of his movies really aren't cult anyway, so it doesn't exactly fit. But I think this one does. His 1958 Vertigo is has to be the weirdest Hitchcock movie of his entire canon. Has to be. It's not a movie that you can watch once. You will never get it. I've seen it about 7, 8 times in the last 3 or 4 years, and I'm still not sure I got it, but I think I'm pretty close finally. Um, and it counts as cult because fans and reviewers did the same thing. They hated it. They panned it when it first came out. It didn't do very well at the theaters. But then as people watched it the second time and the third time, they kind of started to get it. So the premise is you have Jimmy Stewart is a detective, and at the beginning of the film, he's chasing a burglar or somebody, one of the bad guys of some kind, and they're jumping from rooftop to rooftop. Him and his partner, Jimmy Stewart's partner. So he jumps up and almost falls. So he's hanging off the ledge of this film, and his partner stops, lets the bad guy get away, and comes back to try to help him. But in the process of trying to help Jimmy Stewart up, he falls off the building, and Stewart watches him fall and die to the ground. So Stewart develops vertigo because of this. He can't even get on a two-step ladder without getting dizzy for the rest of his life. So he has to retire from being a cop. But then he has a friend who says, "Hey, I know you're retired, but I think my wife is cheating on me. I want you to follow her around and tell me what happens. So follow her around and find out if she's cheating on me." He says, "All right." So he talks him into it. He follows her, and he follows her into this, and she's this blonde woman. It's important actually to the plot. She she goes to some clock tower, like she's in a trance, and she goes up to the clock tower, and he tries to climb the stairs of this clock tower, but you can see, the stairs aren't really uh they have slats where you can see in between them, so when you look down, you can really see down. And he gets his vertigo, so he can't follow her all the way to the top. And the next thing he knows, he sees the guy's wife falling past the window to her death from the top of the clock tower. They establish it as a suicide. But then Jimmy Stewart meets this woman who looks just like that guy's wife. And he can't help but start following her around. And he's not your typical Jimmy Stewart. He's acting kind of creepy, following this woman. And but she has different hair. She has brown hair. he meets her, he establishes a little bit of a relationship with her, they go on a few dates, and he says, I want you to wear this dress. And it's a dress that looks exactly like his friend's wife's dress. And then he says, I want you to dye your hair blonde so that you look even more, he doesn't say so that you look even more like her. But he keeps making her look more and more like the guy's wife. And that leads to the ending that I really can't give away.
Right.
Just don't know where he's going with it. But I think after watching it so many times, I think I finally figured it out. I think it might be a revenge film, maybe. I don't know. You guys see this one? I know.
I have years ago, and they Brian De Palma made something similar to it called Body Double.
And it's
I don't remember the actors that are in it, and it's almost that one. Body Double is almost like part Vertigo, part Rear Window thing. And so that's what that kind of. Whenever when I saw that Body Double, I was like going, this has elements of Hitchcock all over it. All over it.
I was a big Hitchcock fan for a while. I mean, I went through a Hitchcock phase where I would watch absolutely anything I get my hands on that he did.
I haven't seen everything.
Yeah, I tried to see everything. Yeah, there's still a few that I'm missing, but I've seen most of them. This is way his weirdest by far. Yeah, it's got like this dreamlike atmosphere to it through the whole thing. Like when they're at the one girl's apartment, right across the street, there's a neon sign that keeps coming on and coming off, and it's green. So, and the green dress, and it's really in that scene with the green dress, and just keeps flashing on this bright green right through her window and everything. It's just, and it's hazy and grainy a little bit, but I think intentionally so. And it's really, he was just way off the rails on this one, and I don't know, and told him a little too little about what the movie was about.
Right. But it is a classic amongst the fans.
It is. I put it as after Psycho, might be my second favorite. I mean, it's just so creepy and just dream nightmarish throughout the whole thing.
Now I have to dig it out again and watch it. I've got a 4-movie 4K collection of Hitchcock, and that's one of them in there. I have to dig it out and watch that again.
Yeah, it's pretty far out there. It's really hard to understand what he's doing, which is unlike Hitchcock. He kind of does it so that you get it, but the characters don't get it. He's really good with that. But this one, it's he's really vague with a lot of what he's doing.
Right. All right. My next one is, I think, probably my entire time, it'll be the only animated film that I will have on the list. And it's from 1977. It's called Wizards. It's like I said, an animated post-apocalyptic science fiction, sci-fi fantasy film. It's set like millions and millions of years after a nuclear war on Earth, and it sprung the creatures that came back. They were fairies, elves. They were saying these were the first peoples that were on Earth before the humans, and they came back, and then they had creatures, and then 2 wizards were born. One was good and one was evil. Now, the one that was good was a very, very pacifist type of person, and the evil wanted to rule the Earth all by himself. And then what kind of got it to the weird part is the evil wizard was using Nazi propaganda films to get his armies riled up, and then all of a sudden you see these weird looking creatures wearing swastika bands, and I saw this in the movie theater in 1977, so I was 11 years old. I thought it was going to be just a a normal kind of cartoon, but Ralph Bakshi, is it pronounced? He doesn't have any normal films. I mean, I think the closest to normal he probably had is that American Pop, but it was still kind of weird. I mean, everything. I mean, Fritz the Cat, Heavy Traffic. I mean, Fritz the Cat, it was basically borderline pornographic. So but his animation, the way he had it done, it was a mixture of animation and live action, where he would draw around it and kind of animate it that way. So it gave, I thought, a very unique quality to it. But it's really cool that the next film I think he did after this was Lord of the Rings. So it was kind of cool that he was doing like a futuristic. I kind of call this maybe a futuristic Lord of the Rings. Post-apocalyptic. The whole.
That's the animated Lord of the Rings was his next one?
Yeah.
Just to make sure.
Yeah. So that one, I'm not sure if you guys seen it, but it's a good movie. I mean, but I think with this one, you have to be in a certain frame of mind to sit there and watch it, because it has elements of silly comedy in it. You have some comedic moments of like the cartoons of the time, but it's good. I mean, even my girlfriend sat through it, and she doesn't really like these kind of movies. So she sat through it. She says, "Yeah, it was weird, but it was good." So that is my number 3.
Okay, well, that brings us back around to me. And I'm going to stick with Amityville. And I'm also going to stick with super low budget and a movie that came out this year, Amityville Turkey Day. Amityville Turkey Day is the sequel to Amityville Thanksgiving. Amityville Thanksgiving was a little more serious movie. Amityville Thanksgiving centered on this marriage counselor who was actually this demonic guy who was seducing the couples and then killing them and sacrificing them, and so this one takes place in his cabin that's in the Amityville area. See, again, this one isn't a direct tie-in, but it's in the Amityville area. And this bunch of independent filmmakers have decided to make a movie there. There's also a reporter who's trying to get information, and the brother of one of his victims who is trying to get information. And but here's what really makes this movie bizarre. The counselor had a child, but his child is not a human. His child is this turkey, literally a talking turkey, who has like real like Freddy Krueger kind of attitude. I mean, he has a lot of really funny lines that are just really crude. And he's trying to mate with a human woman to bring this whole evil into play. And it is just, I mean, it's very low budget. Don't expect, super high quality stuff here. The turkey I wish the turkey was on screen more, because the turkey's hilarious. I mean, he's just so funny. And that's another one where it's like, okay, you can tell they were limited in budget for the effects on the turkey, but it doesn't matter because it's supposed to be a silly movie. It's a horror comedy. And it's goofy, but it's fun. A lot of really bizarre characters in it too. A lot of these people who are trying to make
Sounds
the
like it.
movies, some of them are real jerks, but some of them you're happy to see them get killed, you know?
I've seen plenty of movies where I did not like any of the characters, and I didn't care. Like that, I didn't care if they got killed or anything bad happened to them. I just
Yeah. So yeah, that's my fourth pick. It's pretty bizarre.
Fucking turkey. Okay, we back around to me.
Yep.
yeah.
Okay, well, I finally made my way to 1970.
Oh,
My fourth movie is Equinox. This is actually it's a lot better than it should be. And it is very weird. And I believe it's the inspiration, or at least had some inspiration, some influence on both Evil Dead and Blair Witch Project. It was another college film. This was somebody's college project that they eventually, I think they went back and filmed some extra stuff to finalize it out after graduation, but still, it did get a theatrical release. And there's only one person you've ever recognized in there, and he's not even under the name that you would know him under. Frank Bonner would later be Herb Tarlick and WKRP in Cincinnati, but he's there under his real name. But the plot is this guy's running away from the scene, and he gets stopped by the cops. Cops stop him, and he's got this recording. And then they interview him, and he's got this recording. They play the recording for somebody else, and he's going back and talking about what happened to make him. He's in a asylum now, and the recording is what he experienced to put him in this asylum. So it's got that kind of vibe of lost footage kind of a thing, right? But on this case, it's a recording. And basically the story is two couples, I guess teenage couples, college age anyway, are going on a picnic out in, looks like it's somewhere out in the West, New Mexico or Arizona or something. And they meet up with this park ranger who tells them they have to get out of here. But when they do, they find this Book of the Dead somehow, and they read from it, of course, and then the creatures start coming out, and they have these stop motion creatures. They have the Cyclops, this huge Cyclops that chases them around, a bunch of giant monsters chasing them all over the place. And it turns out that the park ranger is actually the devil, and gave them the book to make him, bring up all of these creatures. So it was all planned by this, park ranger who's actually in disguise. He's basically the devil. And
isn't his name Asmodeus or something like that?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great movie.
And the special effects, though, are done by one of the people who wound up winning an Academy Award for Star Wars. So it actually has a Star Wars connection and everything. So a lot of these people did go on to do bigger and better things. But it's really a creepy movie. It's pretty good. And, of course, it has giant beasts, which I'm always all about, and stop motion type stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That's one I actually saw pictures from when I was a kid, and I've always wanted to see it, and I've never seen that movie, but I've always wanted to see it.
It's worth it. It's definitely worth it. I first saw it on the Late Great Horror Show, my local hosted horror movie show in Erie, Pennsylvania. Showed it way back in 81 or 82 is when it was on, so somewhere in there. But
YouTube had it. I don't know if it's still up there or not. I know you can buy it only on DVD by Criterion. I really wish they would put it on Blu-ray because it's a really good movie.
It is. It's really
I think it has more of a. I can see Evil Dead being more inspired by it than Blair Witch. But I also like the fact that what they used that screen where Asmodeus comes out from nowhere, and it's just basically it's a paint. I think it's a painting of the same scenery. So when he walks through, looks like he's going. I think it made like that kind of a weird whispering sound thing. But yeah, that's a great film.
That's a really underrated one. Back in the days of cable, it used to be one of those late night movies that pop on every now and again. In the middle of the night.
And the trailer for it, it has that voice, Equinox. It's like,
yeah.
I mean, it's a great movie. It's a great movie, a great title for a movie.
It is.
I mean,
yeah, because I think all this has to happen on like the equinox, and that's why it was. That's why that comes into play as well. But
that's a good one. My next one has a little bit of ties to this shirt. It's from 1988, The Unnamable, and this is in dedication to Gary because he's the Lovecraft freak here. This was one when I first saw it. I mean, I did not know anything about Lovecraft. I thought, okay, obviously I knew it was a story that he wrote. But it's just kind of interesting that it's a haunted house. It basically is a haunted house story with this unnamable creature, and I gotta see who was in it. It's first set in the late 1800s, and then the talk ghost stories, and I don't know if this is very faithful to the actual story. No. But I thought it was really good.
It's a fun movie.
The sequel, not so much. The sequel kind of was like a rehash in a way. Like I said, I'm not an expert on H.P. Lovecraft, so what I usually do is I kind of put that off to the side and I try to judge it from how they make a movie. I kind of wish that more of the Lovecraft movies were more towards the source material than someone kind of thought, oh, well, I can make it better. Don't make it better. Leave it as it is. Maybe have better dialogue into it, But this one, you like it's kind of a cool looking monster too.
Yeah, it is.
I occasionally go back, to watch it every so often, just because it was at that time period was. I would rent it on VHS several times because it's like, or I'd rent it one time like over a weekend and watch it maybe 2 or 3 times just because I like the vibe of the movie. So, if you want
the atmosphere.
Yeah. And also too, it has that 80s. There's something about movies that are made in the 80s that in my opinion, no other decade has. It's just, it doesn't matter what the genre of film is, when you see that that's an 80s, and you can usually pinpoint, not with accuracy, what year without looking it up on, Wikipedia or anything like that. You can kind of guess, oh, it's early or late or mid 80s, It's hard. Some of the older ones, it's hard to tell because they're pretty much the same kind of vibe to it. don't want to. I'm still kind of getting the premise of everything, but it has virtually unknown actors, and I don't think any of these actors went on to do anything substantial. So, because I was looking at the list, and none of the actors' names I recognize from horror. So I think maybe they just did this, and pretty much that's it. You know, at least that's on my radar. So that's my fourth pick.
Okay, well, comes back around to me then. And I am sticking with 2024 and another horror comedy. This one is a bizarre movie called Crust. Now, what makes this movie really bizarre, well, there are a number of things that make it bizarre. It's a horror comedy, but it's actually almost a rom-com at times, but a really twisted rom-com. But what really throws it over the top into craziness is the monster itself, which the monster is a stack of dirty socks that has gotten animated and brought to life. But it's actually kind of not really a malevolent being, except that it likes the main character, and so if anybody threatens that character, it will attack him and kill him. And so it's kind of really bizarre. It does have I can't remember the actor's name now. He played Cameron in Ferris Bueller. Alan Rickman, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's in it. He's like the one big name in it. And he's not the star. He's one of the side characters. But yeah, and it's all in black and white, except there's when the monster gets animated, there's some blue light that goes onto it, and then the very final scene of the movie's in color. But otherwise, it's all in black and white too, which that kind of ties into where we started this whole session
Right.
with black and white movies. I mean, it's obviously a choice that was made to do it in black and white. And this guy works in a laundromat and basically lives in the back of it. So almost the entire movie takes place in this laundromat.
Sounds interesting.
It is interesting. It's pretty bizarre. The main character is somebody who was he was a child star, and like the way they describe it is like the show was like the Brady Bunch kind of thing. But then as an adult, he's kind of gotten nowhere with anything. So he's living in this laundromat and running it. But yeah, so it's a pretty bizarre movie. The monster's actually kind of cute too.
That's one thing a monster doesn't want to hear. Oh, you're
Yeah.
cute.
Yeah.
You're cute.
I mean, and especially when you consider it's a stack of dirty socks. How cute could that be? But they managed to make the puppet look kind of cute. He's got some pretty good expressions.
All right, that's definitely weird.
Okay. My last one. Probably the weirdest movie that I have on my list. House from 1977. I finally make my way to Japan. You know, I probably could have done 5 Japanese movies here if I really wanted to. But they are the best at weird movies. And this is the weirdest movie that I think I've ever seen, and that's saying something. Although Gary's come up with something that might challenge it. I don't know. Those, living socks and things. But it has this group of sisters get into inherit this house, and of course it's haunted. And every one of their names has to do with something of their personality. Melody likes to play music. Sweet eats sweets a lot. I'm looking up their names because I can't remember a lot of them. Anyway, you get the idea. And just the most bizarre thing. And isn't there a talking cat? And the cat is actually kind of the savior of the whole movie, actually, towards the end. But the whole thing is just so bizarre, it defies description almost. Um, but they go through this house and all the weird things keep happening um, throughout, and I'm drawing a blank on some some other things, but a lot of them die and wind up in paintings in the house, and it's just the most bizarre thing, and I don't think it really even has an ending. It's my only qualm with it. My only one complaint. It feels like there should be some kind of an ending, but I don't think there really is any ending at all. It just kind of stops. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really really a bizarre film. You almost have to see it to believe it. But I thought, to me, it really spoke to me. But that's the way a lot of those Japanese movies work with me on some cerebral level for some reason, and I'm not sure I've ever established why or how they work on me like that, but they do. And it is definitely worth seeing, even if it is just so bizarre.
I bought it on a blind thing based on some people were praising it. I was like going, okay, I know. And then I did find out how they pronounce it. We could say it house, but it's house.
Something like that, yeah. But the
And
American
it's like
title is House, but yes.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's the most bizarre film I have ever seen. And I've seen a few of them, but that one, like you said, it just defies thing. My girlfriend watched with me, and her reaction is, "What the fuck did we just watch? What the fuck did we just watch?" And I said, "I don't know. I was told that it was good." And she says, "Well, it's interesting. You know, I won't say it's bad, but I won't say it's good either. It's interesting." And I said, "Well, at least you experience it in your life. If anybody ever asks you what's the weirdest movie you ever seen, you could tell them that one."
Yeah, that's definitely has to be the weirdest movie I've ever seen. I mean, I've seen some weird
Yeah,
movies.
yeah, that's a good choice.
It should be pointed out that there is an American movie called House from
Yes,
like 1986 or something with William Catt of The Greatest American Hero. Has nothing to do with this
nothing
movie.
to it. No,
It was like an
nothing.
Americanized version, but so I watched it one day. I'm like, this has nothing to do with it. I mean, it wasn't a bad movie in its own right, but it's
Isn't
not.
Richard Knoll in that one too?
Yeah,
I think he is. Yes, he's the next door
yeah,
neighbor. Yeah, but that has nothing to do with this. I kind of thought maybe, because they do that a lot. They'll have a Japanese movie and then they'll do an American version of it with all American actors and redo it if it's
yeah.
successful enough. But that's not the case here. But that's just
No,
totally
I don't think it could be remade.
I don't think so either.
I honestly, and no offense to people out there that do take hallucinogens, I think you have to be on every single one of them that is available on the planet to make something a fraction of what that is. It's that out there. I mean, I would say out of all the films so far, that's one people that watch this thing should go seek out. If you, I'll even do this. I say, if you call yourself a film lover, you go see that movie.
But it worked for me. It's one of those
Yeah.
that it speaks to you or it doesn't. It kind of speaks to me somehow. It's
Yeah,
definitely
it just.
out there.
I mean, if anything, if you want to really kind of classify it, it's kind of an art.
And the colors in that one too. They did the vibrant colors like they used to do in the later kaiju movies.
Yeah.
And I mean, there is some gore. A lady's leg gets pulled off, but it's not really gory in a disgusting way or anything. It's almost kind of a cartoonish type of a thing there. But
what about the person that gets decapitated and it turns out it's a watermelon?
Yeah, that's right. Yes. And I think her name was Watermelon, or that was her nickname anyway, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. They had some really, really cutesy nicknames, like you said. Yeah, that's a good one.
Killed each other.
That's a good one. I think you got one there. All right. Well, for my final one, comes from the land down under, and from 2014, Wormwood, as also known as Wormwood Road of the Dead. And basically the tagline for how they advertise it is Mad Max meets Dawn of the Dead. I would add a little bit of a Peter Jackson vibe, from Brain Dead and what is it? Oh, his very first one, Bad Taste. It has that kind of a feel. It's kind of post-apocalyptic and no gasoline, but what they do is they use the energy it's basically the farts that come off of the zombies to power their vehicles. It's like they contain them in some. They have these essence, this disgusting smells coming off of the zombies are powering. It's kind of like a zombie version of ethanol. And it's pretty gory and it has a lot of slapstick going on. It looks like it could be a Peter Jackson film early before he made it, Hollywood name. And it's kind of a fun movie because it has, like I said, it has that Mad Max vibe to it, and it really does. From the cars, and some of the filming techniques kind of remind me of the first Mad Max film, but then adding in that zombie element, just over the top. And I think there's one zombie girl that is able to control the zombies through ESP. So it's out there. I think it's a close second to Bill's. It's a close second in weirdness, but it is recommended if you love zombie movies. It's one of the more unique zombie movies in an era where we were basically flooded with zombie movies. Everybody and their mother was making zombie movies, and it was too oversaturated with that, and the overall feel of dread was pretty much gone. All it was is, okay, zombies are just eating people, and there's no message behind it. No, you don't feel like you're in any danger. Because that's the one thing when I used to watch the Romero's, Dawn of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, and even Day of the Dead. Those three, I always felt like I'm in danger, and I would always look for exits. I was always looking for the exits. Because just in case, if there is a zombie takeover, where am I going to go? I mean, I guess you might want to call that zombie PTSD. But this is a great one. I mean, the characters in there are funny, and they did make a sequel to it. They had a short-lived web series that was pretty good. The sequel was okay. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it just wasn't. They took too long in between to do it, and the essence of the atmosphere just wasn't the same in the second one. So that is my final one. And like I said, I really think because, I mean, when I went through my collection, I found at least 15 of these weird kind of movies. So I think we could, down in the future sometime, do another one of these.
Yeah, I eliminated a few from my list too. There's quite a few that I wanted to touch on that didn't. So
I knocked just one off of my list, but I'm sure I could come up with some more. I just had some ideas for some more while we were talking. So,
Right. Yeah, it's, I mean,
today, Gary, you could maybe even dial them down a little bit. Maybe not as we.
maybe they'll make more Amityville movies with maybe doing different holidays, you know, Amityville 4th of July or Amityville
lesser known holidays, Amityville Arbor Day and
Amityville Boxing Day.
Yeah, Boxing Day. Amityville Groundhog Day.
Yeah, so, you know, people watching this, you know, you got 15 movies you can check out if you love weird movies. And I'm sure if you're already subscribed to us, you love movies that kind of fall under that category.
And again, leave comments and tell us if there's some you think we should check out.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And before we go,
yes.
Plug, I have a collection of short stories and poetry that I mostly, about half previously published and half not previously published. Short stories and poetry. It's available on Amazon, Classic Amps, Classic Horror Emporium, the collection, named after my Facebook group, the same name. But so feel free to check that out. It's horror and a lot of weird stuff, kind of like my taste in movies.
Hey.
Okay, and if we're plugging stuff, I want to plug something too, which is not my own, but this short film, She Knows, which is a prelude to a prologue to the sequel to He Knows, hit YouTube. If you look for Stephen Anthony Morris's YouTube channel, you'll see it there. And both my wife and I have a couple lines in the movie, and I get to be dead on the floor in the movie. So it's a fun, and you know what? I am really proud to have been part of it. Everybody did a great job, I think. I watched it, and you know, it just looks great. It's and we had a fun time doing it too. So I want to plug that too.
I don't have anything to plug, only to just say these two guys have some great content on their Facebook pages, and Gary has his YouTube, Scary Gary. He's got his, what was the other one?
Which
the main one?
Spooky Ventures.
Spooky Ventures, yeah.
Yeah, Spooky Ventures. Which Spooky Movie Time with Scary Gary is under Spooky Ventures. So, and there's a whole Spooky Ventures YouTube channel, about like 1.2 or 1,200 videos, over 1,200 videos I put out on there. So, yeah.
So, you know, a lot of stuff to go to watch, and like Gary says, if you got movies that fall under the weirdness, you know, put it down below. And you know, even if we've already seen it, maybe other people haven't.
Right. And maybe you'll put something there we haven't seen.
Yeah, that'd be good. So I always like discovering new stuff, even if, you know, everybody else probably has known it for years. You know, it's like, hey, you know, I wasn't ready back then. And also to close off 2024, was hoping that next year has a lot more good movies for us to talk about. We'll be digging into our respected collections to come up with some really good ones. And January we're going to get back onto our schedule of the thing being released on the third Friday of every month.
This one could still make the third Friday.
Yeah, so we'll see about that. But January will definitely be back on track, and we'll have some good topics for you guys out there. So I'd like to thank you guys again. I mean, they've been here with me since day one, and I appreciate their input. I mean, you guys actually over the course of these episodes, I've found some good movies based on what you've talked about. So I'm hoping people out there done the same. All right. Well,
you've heard of the Dream Team. We're the Scream Team.
The Scream Team, yeah.
There you go, Scream Team.
All right. Well, we will all see everybody next year. Thank you very much for watching this episode. And stay tuned for the next one.